distinguished judges, professors, academics, practitioners, colleagues, friends, representatives of the civil society, and many, many others. Welcome to all of you to the Palace of Justice here in Nuremberg. Welcome to this historic courtroom. That's the very place where the western part of the prosecution and trials of persons allegedly responsible for the most heinous crimes mankind had suffered had started. And it's today, I think, a perfect place to bridge between the two tribunals that were established after the Second World War. And both of them, they found, or they are the foundation of what we call modern international criminal law. So we will in the next days, in this very room, discuss the Tokyo judgment at the place where the Nuremberg judgment was rendered. And I think there is hardly a better way to demonstrate that these two judgments, these two trials and the ideas behind them actually are closely linked to each other. We had the idea for this conference in the Academy already in 2015. It started when we thought about events recognizing the start of the Nuremberg trial in 1945. And of course, with a judgment back in 2016, it even emerged that there should be also an event that recognizes, analyzes, and discusses the impact that the Tokyo trial and the judgment had on the further development of the law. And I think that this judgment deserves, as the judgment of Nuremberg, to be highlighted, remembered, because both together, and this is really unique, they manifest together the universal idea, the universal approach, not to simply execute people who lost the war or had started one, but to bring them to trial, to prosecute them and to adjudicate them. And it took 50 years after the judgments of Tokyo and Nuremberg, 50 years before that idea of a worldwide, of a universal approach in the fight against impunity materialized again with the Rome Statute, which is now 20 years old. And the Academy also will commemorate that event later in the year. And it took even 20 years longer, 70 years actually, before the crime of aggression, which was formally recognized as the crime against peace, became the written law and the applicable law now of the ICC. So from that point of view, this is certainly a great reason why we should remember Tokyo and Nuremberg together, because, as I said, together they form the fundament of today's international criminal law. Many important issues arising from the Tokyo judgment deserve to be addressed, and frankly spoken, more issues than this conference can deal with. So we bring together over 30 experts in the field of international criminal law, but also of other disciplines. And given the complexity of the subject, I think the interdisciplinary approach on the legal issues around the Tokyo Tribunal and its judgment are worth to be discussed. But these issues are not only and solely discussed from a legal point of view, but we also have historians, sociologists, other scientists, other experts from different fields among the audience, and more importantly among the panelists that will discuss these matters in the next 2 days. And I'm very much looking forward to learn from these experts. And for the Academy, this is definitely a unique opportunity, not only for the experts, but also for us to advance our mandate and to contribute. So this is a conference that we already have started working on early last year, and the hard work started in autumn. And to our best knowledge, and that is the result of your engagement as panelists and moderators, this is the largest conference on this subject in Europe this year. So I'm glad that you all help us making this a most noticeable event, and I'm very pleased about the participation of people from Japan who actually took an enormous effort to travel a long way, like others did, from China as well. We have TV stations from China, from Japan, that take note of this event, so it must have, hopefully, a positive impact and will contribute to the discussion of the matters. We plan to have a publication, an edited publication, at a follow-up for this event, and I can only invite all speakers to contribute to that. My special thanks in that regard go to Professor van Lingen, who has kindly agreed to be a co-editor together with the Academy of that publication. So please help us in making this also a meaningful thing. And let me start with Professor Kerstin von Lingen to mention some special thanks to her. First and foremost, her expertise and experience and also generosity in the preparation of this conference had an enormous impact. I frankly confess that not everyone in the Academy, including myself, is an expert on the Tokyo judgment. She is, and with her help, I think we brought together a very, very great conference. Likewise, I would express my warm gratitude and my thanks to Professor Tutani, who is going to be our keynote speaker tonight. I think she's the one that had the farthest distance to travel all the way from Hawaii to here, and I hope the jet lag is not too heavy. So thanks very much for coming. We will listen to your keynote presentation on the historiography of the Tokyo trial, the past, the present, and the future. I also would like to thank in advance all distinguished speakers, panel chairs, and also the participants that are here and making these events through their contribution an interesting one. And last but not least, also the members and all the members of our foundation board and our advisory council, as well as the Higher Regional Court of Nuremberg. We are guests in their courtroom. They are our landlord, and I'm most grateful for their support. Representatives of all mentioned institutions will greet you in a second, and I'll close very, very quickly. All staff of the Nuremberg Academy are also included in my thanks. And if I mention two particular, it doesn't mean that the others haven't worked like hell, but I would like to mention Yolana Macraoa and Eduardo Toledo in particular, who have restless and tireless work to make this conference a success. Tonight, we are looking forward to the keynote speech, as I said, and we will afterwards have a video message from Professor Onuma, plus a dialogue. And the Deputy Director, Dr. Dietrich, will shortly introduce into these events. But first and foremost, we have the keynote speech of Professor Tutani immediately after the greetings of the other representatives. With that, I wish you a fruitful, a nice, and enriching, and to the degree possible also an entertaining conference, which is also a good basis maybe for a network. And I'm looking very much forward to the discussion. I'm sure I'll learn something. And with that, I thank you for your patience and hand over to Dr. Michael Koch, who is the representative of the Foundation Board of the Academy. Thank you very much.
This is very rare for me to be able to follow somebody of the same size. So for once, I don't have to rearrange anything. If anything, I have to lower it. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, and maybe I may add, dear friends, liebe Freunde. I'm here as the German legal advisor, as the representative of the Foreign Office, and it is not my role to suggest or to tell you what you will find or should explore in the next 2 days. So I'll be as brief and as concise as I can be. We have already heard in this place of all places that it wasn't only Nuremberg that was, properly speaking, the birthplace of international criminal law, but equally the trials of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East in Tokyo, at Tokyo between 1946 and 1948. Until the 90s, Klaus Rackwitz has just explained this to us, the lessons learned from these surely momentous events appear to have had no consequence. Then suddenly there was a whole series of new courts that were established. And finally, in 1998, as a kind of culmination point, the Statute of Rome was passed, establishing an even more ambitious enterprise, the International Criminal Court at The Hague, a court the aspiration of which was to provide accountability for the most serious crimes anywhere in the world. 20 years later, ladies and gentlemen, the political framework has obviously changed. And I'm not going to surprise you when I say it hasn't changed for the better. Our Chancellor Angela Merkel just said a few days ago, very succinctly, I think, and I quote here, "The multilateral method is under pressure, is even under attack," end of quote. And I'm afraid, to some extent, this is true for ICL, for International Criminal Law as well. I hope that looking back at the origins of it all and of this great and inspiring idea to a time when humanity was just stepping out of deep, very deep shadows, that doing this can provide us with encouragement and allow us to draw new strength and faith in our manifold efforts to advance accountability in the world and indeed anywhere. I hope that this important conference can, in its own way, contribute to that. And in that spirit, I wish you a happy and fruitful meeting, while thanking the Academy here at Nuremberg for taking this wonderful initiative. Thank you very much.
We put it down, right? Oh, this whole thing looks up. So which, is it okay like this?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you very warmly into Courtroom 600 here on behalf of the Council of the Nuremberg Principals Academy. I'm the president, and my colleagues are here with you as well. So it gives me great pleasure to see so many of you, and tomorrow I think we will have many more attend these discussions on the judgments of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, IMTFE, which was held in the courthouse of the tribunal, the former War Ministry building in Tokyo from 4th to 12th November 1948. So before I proceed, let me especially thank Dr. Michael Koch, who has to leave just now, to thank him very much for his leadership and support over these past few years when he set this academy up. And he will be leaving us this year, so thank you very much, Dr. Koch, for your leadership and support. So the delivery of the Tokyo judgment marked, in my view, one of the first steps towards the fight against impunity post-Second World War, and was undeniably a very welcome step forward in addressing the mass atrocities committed worldwide. As noted in the special proclamation establishing the Tokyo Tribunal, the intention was that, I quote, war criminals should be brought to justice, and offenses should include crimes against peace, including conventional war crimes and crimes against humanity. The IMTFE was established for the just and prompt trial and punishment of major war criminals. And Article 1 speaks of laying down inter alia the procedure for fair trial for the accused and admission of evidence during the trial. The IMTFE, as well as the IMT in Nuremberg, was established under specific circumstances, addressing crimes that were not fully defined in terms as we know them today, and were definitely not recognized as universal crimes at that point in time. And so it faced many challenges and received much criticism towards, firstly, its establishment, and secondly, its functioning. Nonetheless, both tribunals set important precedents for modern international criminal law, both in terms of substantive law and procedural law. on accountability, on rule of law, and on lessons learned. Some of these critiques, or rather the lessons learned, will be mentioned during this conference, and some remain debated within the international criminal justice area even today. So it is for this particular reason that it is important to remember the key messages arising from this process. Some of the key messages: overall, the Tokyo trials took only 2.5 years, from May 1946 until November 1948. So such speedy trials will not fit in 21st century notions of fair trial. Secondly, it addressed a wide-ranging scope of crimes committed during the given period and falling within the jurisdiction. And thirdly, it brought the accused to justice. It ensured that their trials were fair and expeditious, and sentenced them to varying terms of imprisonment from 7 years to the death penalty. The establishment of individual criminal responsibility for these crimes, including aggressive war, was to send a message that commission of similar crimes would not be acceptable and should never be repeated again. And the importance of these tribunals' dictum is far-reaching, even today, as we face more and more conflicts spread around the world with little opportunity to address them in terms of timely accountability and the rule of law. And we are witnesses to horrendous human rights abuses and systematic violence against civilians in Syria, Yemen, Burundi, South Sudan, to name a few places. So these events themselves highlight the persistent relevance of the legacy that was set out in the era of the first generation tribunals, Tokyo and Nuremberg. So here we are in Courtroom 600 in Nuremberg to commemorate these Tokyo trials. It is an opportune moment to recall the importance and lasting relevance of the Nuremberg principles. The Nuremberg principles that attempted to embody principles arising from the accountability mechanism in place after the Second World War, despite some differences, are enduring, but adherence to them is often dependent on political will, especially in relation to issues of compliance, of amnesties, and/or immunities. The universal recognition of the Nuremberg principles and their application is the core mandate of the Nuremberg Principles Academy, and is also the reason why the Academy is interested in throwing some light on the Tokyo jurisprudence, on lessons learned in terms of their procedural and substantive law, and their adherence to the principles that were adopted in the post-International Military Tribunals era. The International Nuremberg Principles Academy seeks to honor their legacy and promote the development and application of international criminal law. The Academy owes a great deal to the staff, the director, and the Klaus, who just addressed us, and the deputy director, who have put this program together and support the council of the Academy. So in essence, the Nuremberg principles are more than just what happened in Courtroom 600. They are reflective of what the trials, including the Tokyo trial and subsequent trials, have evolved into, namely the system of international criminal law as we know it today. A, to fight against impunity and ensure accountability. B, to deliver justice for victims. And C, to achieve sustainable peace through justice. The Nuremberg Academy is mindful of this legacy and mindful of the challenges that were overcome in the fight against impunity. And the Academy is determined to continue addressing these challenges in advancing international criminal justice. So we do have We have come a long way, and we still have a long way to go in terms of scope and rules of international criminal law, of how to look at the lessons from past generations of international tribunals. These advances will carry further lessons for future improvement, such as greater effectiveness or greater efficiency in addressing fair trial demands and also timely delivery of justice. So this event, focusing on commemorating the 70 years of the delivery of the Tokyo judgment, is a timely reminder. Its added value of interdisciplinary orientation to many disciplines is remarkable, and I express my appreciation to the Nuremberg Academy for its ambition, commitment, and caliber to organize an event of this magnitude, combining the expertise of so many international scholars and experts from varying expert area. So it is a groundbreaking conference held in Germany and Europe for the first time, and all of us look forward to the very meaningful dialogue that will emerge in the next few days. So let me conclude by once again reiterating a very sincere welcome from the Council of the Nuremberg Principals Academy. Thank you for coming.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you in this Courtroom 600, which is probably the most famous one in the world. As you know, it was here that the Nuremberg Trials were held. In these trials, the leaders of the Nazi regime were indicted and tried as war criminals by the International Military Tribunal. Thus, this courtroom may be regarded as the birthplace of modern international criminal law. You celebrate the 70th anniversary of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. This anniversary is one in a series of anniversaries celebrated in 2018. Let me just mention few of those anniversaries. We commemorate this year 200 years of Bavaria's first constitution. In 1818, Bavaria became a constitutional monarchy. Since then, the Bavarian king had to swear on the Bavarian constitution. Its articles were implemented, and so its concepts were brought to life. We also celebrate 100 years Free State of Bavaria. In November 1918, after the end of the First World War, Kurt Eisner proclaimed the Free State of Bavaria a free state as opposed to a state ruled by monarchs, therefore a republic. In 1918, the Higher Court of Nuremberg actually started its work in this courtroom, although the building had already been inaugurated 2 years earlier in the middle of the First World War. 20 years ago, on the 10th of April 1998, the Good Friday Agreement was signed and largely brought an end to 30 years of violent conflict in Northern Ireland. On 14th of May 1948, the independent state of Israel was proclaimed. It offered shelter for the Jewish refugees after the Shoah. A longed-for state denied to 6 million murdered Jews, but a new home for many survivors. Israel's right to exist and the solidarity with its citizens form an integral part of Germany's political guidelines. And after intense negotiations, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court was adopted on the 17th of July 1998. The court, which has its seat in The Hague, investigates and tries individuals charged with genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. What do all these anniversaries have in common? They are all examples for the aim to achieve peace through law. for the attempt to prevent violence and war, for the attempt to build a framework for peace between nations and people and to achieve sustainable and lasting peace by settling conflicts without violence. The Nuremberg and Tokyo trials mark in particular the consensus of the Allies to establish the individual criminal responsibility as a new principle of international criminal law. They demonstrate the effort to achieve peace through law. A global peace through law is in our days of conflict and war far away, which makes your conference so important. I wish you interesting and fruitful lectures and discussions and a pleasant stay in this wonderful city of Nuremberg. Thank you very much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, in my capacity as member of the Nuremberg City Council, I have the honor to welcome you in the city of Nuremberg. Today I stand in for our Lord Mayor, Mr. Ulrich Mali, who unfortunately cannot be here today. It's a great honor for our city, that is, to have this internationally recognized conference for the first time being held here in Nuremberg. It's also an honor to have world-leading experts from even Japan or Hawaii from far away here in our city. Nuremberg, I think, provides the ideal setting for this conference because it's both. On the one hand, Nuremberg is a historic site where perpetrators of crimes against humanity held their party rallies, for example. And on the other hand, we have this historic site where in Courtroom 600, the first trials took place where individuals were held accountable for those crimes against humanity. And having both facets of the history here in this, our city, it leaves us with a difficult legacy. I think the Nuremberg City Council decided, therefore, in a right way, that we will do everything to only send signs of peace and international understanding as well as human rights in the future from our city. This is our obligation, and so therefore, having this in mind, our city administration has made a lot of efforts to promote human rights, support the rule of law, and so on from this city. For example, it has brought a lot of impressive and worldwide recognized initiatives like the Way of Human Rights, as you maybe know, the International Nuremberg Human Rights Award, and Human Rights Film Festival. In connection to Nuremberg as City of Human Rights, I want to mention two institutions. One, of course, the Memoriam Nuremberg Trials Museum, as well as, secondly, of course, the International Nuremberg Principal Academy, which was created in 2014. I think both mentioned institutions have become an indispensable asset for our City of Human Rights. So all in all, I'm very proud to welcome you here in Nuremberg as City of Human Rights for this and very important event. I wish you a successful conference with good outcomes. Enjoy your stay here in Nuremberg. I invite you to discover the rich, multi-layered history of the city during your stay here in Nuremberg. But history isn't everything. Nuremberg has some culinary highlights too. You can get the best bratwurst sausage of the world in Nuremberg. You are in the sausage capital of the world, so hopefully you will try one. Thank you very much.